Hi, my name is Susan Cranston, and I'm the host of Authentik You, a talk show that features people who've made changes in their life to follow a more authentic path. We all have hopes and dreams, but all too often, we don't pay attention to those needs or to the deep calling of our subconscious. Sometimes it's easier to go through the motions and not challenge ourselves to live our life to the fullest. We can live an authentic life, one that brings us joy and a sense of purpose. If we focus with determination, we can make anything happen, and it's all a matter of deciding how much we want to make our dream a reality. Joining me today is Dave Inglis, an instructor and community coordinator for the Launchpad program at Wilfrid Laurier University. Dave started his own venture called the Concussion Toolbox, targeting Ontario schools and sports organizations. Also joining me is Carson Kolberg. He is a Wilfrid Laurier graduate who entered Laurier's Launchpad program in his senior year. With the support of WLU's Launchpad program, Carson and his partner, Irene Divinis, co-founded Meal in a Jar Inc. back in March of 2013. And on this episode of Authentik You, we'll find out more about this entrepreneurial incubator for senior students from Laurier's arts, science, music, and business faculties, and the businesses that these gentlemen started. Let's dive right into the show. Dave and Carson, thank you so much for joining me here in Authentik You.
Oh, our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Delighted to have you here on the show. So, Dave, can you tell me a little bit more about this Launchpad program and how did it get started, and just a little bit more information for our viewers?
Absolutely. So the Laurier Launchpad program actually started years ago, probably about 7 or 8, where it was the Entrepreneurship Accelerator program. And then it was formally rebranded about 2 years ago to Laurier Launchpad, which is more focused on that modern entrepreneurial management program, that lean launchpad that started from Stanford University. And we've kind of adopted that program. But Susan, more or less what it is, it's a university-based incubator program where students like Carson from all different faculties, science, music, business, social work, can come together and for course credit, take an idea that they have, something they're really passionate about, and use our methodology to go out in something called customer discovery and see if there's really an opportunity for their idea, their business in the marketplace. And it's all for course credit. So this is an opportunity where students can have very, very low risk and try and make it happen. I mean, our goal behind it, though, to be quite frank, is yes, to start businesses. If we could, we'd knock them out of the park like Meal in a Jar all the time. But for us, the real goal of the Laurier Launchpad is to provide a great opportunity for students to have breakthrough moments in personal development and also kind of walk away with a methodology to take any idea they have, whether it's Meal in a Jar or Carson's sort of fourth business down the road, to try and validate that and make it happen. So that's the Laurier Launchpad in essence.
Well, it's fabulous. It's a really safe environment that can help, create this trajectory for students who have an idea and, turn it into something very successful potentially.
Absolutely, and that's certainly the goal, and the ability to have that within the Communitech Hub here in Kitchener and Waterloo and complement that with the community around it is incredible.
It really is. So tell me a little bit about your executive director, Steve Farlow. I know he's been integral to this program. What role has he played?
So Steve is really kind of the thought leader behind this entire program, who's really trying to build it from the ground up and really put its mark within the greater ecosystem of here in Kitchener and Waterloo, working with the university institution to really get it recognized from an academic perspective, but also really make sure that we have the resources, the community stakeholders, the mentors to really provide our students with every single resource they need to make it happen.
And also probably the expertise and the background that he brings from his, years of experience academically and working with students too.
Absolutely, and the fact that he created his own business, that's where you have a really nice hybrid there, where you have that academic body of knowledge and you mix that with an applied experience. That's where somebody like Steve in an executive director role can really make a big impact and create a great program.
Right. And Carson, how have you been involved with Steve? So what role has he played for you in the success of Meal in a Jar?
So it even started before Meal in a Jar. I was a student president at Laurier in an organization called Isaac. And I had a chance to cross paths with Steve and see some of the MBA office and the entrepreneurship office and a couple other spaces in the business school. And when it came up to the end of my president term and I was going into my last semester of school, I said, I think I like this piece of starting businesses and seeing problems in the world and giving a chance to solve them. So when I first put in my application for the Launchpad program, it was very much just, I'm looking to work with food, create healthy options, do something that's socially and environmentally conscious. And from having worked with Steve before and having worked with Dave before, it's a very guided path right into the Launchpad program.
So it worked It was symbiotic relationship for you, for sure. So tell me about Meal in a Jar. And you're wearing a shirt today. You're very colorful. Actually, you blend in very nicely with the set here on Authentik You.
I think that fits, right?
Yeah, sure. It absolutely does. So what is Meal in a Jar?
So Meal in a Jar started out of two problems. It started a problem that my business partner Irene was having and a problem that I was having. Irene, with two daughters my age and a husband, she had the everyday struggle of making lunches for work or for school or for herself. And every night she was making enough food to make enough for the next day, but there was always too few leftovers. So she started making these Meal in a Jar and grabbed a mason jar from her counter and putting it together. And at the same time that this was happening, it would have been January of this year, I had the same problem. I was graduating university, and after 4 or 5 years of living the university diet and the university lifestyle, I started to say, well, I wish there was easier, faster, healthier food out there. And I saw this gap at that $10 price point. And so I entered into the Launchpad program saying, I think I can solve this problem. I think this problem exists. And it wasn't until I was getting my hair cut 2 weeks into the program, and I had done my customer discovery interviews and learned that this problem was large scale, that I saw the Meal in a Jar sitting on the counter. And it was my hairstylist and Irene's hairstylist and your hairstylist, who were all the same person. And I asked for Irene's number right away. I just said, this is the thing. This is the solution. And I got Irene's number and reached out. And so it was a combination of forces of the academic side and just going out and trying stuff and asking questions and seeing the world. And that brought Meal in a Jar to life.
And not being afraid to go for it, right?
You got to say yes.
You do have to say
I'll
yes.
never forget that day you came back. Guys, you won't believe it. I just got my hair cut, and we're like, what are you talking about, guys? No, all ideas come from everywhere, right? Even a hairdressing salon, I guess.
Yeah, you never know. You have to just stay open to it. Mm-hmm. And I think you touched on a really important thing. So just before we go take a break, it's the concept of really, in any business, solving for a problem that you have that will really generate something that's going to be hopefully lucrative and successful, because if you have that problem, then someone else likely has the same issue, right? Do you find that to be the case?
I agree wholeheartedly, and even just to build on that, I'd say you have to get out there and talk to everybody and ask them about that problem, because I think we can have these problems and see our own solution, but until you get out and see the whole canvas and see how it all sort of fits together, and once you've talked to, say, 100 people or 150 people, then you can say with certainty, this is the problem.
This is the problem for sure. Well, there's so many more questions I have for both of you, so please stay with us. We're going to be back more with Dave and Carson to find out the rest of their story. Stay with us here in Authentik You. Hi, I'm Susan Cranston. Welcome back to Authentik You. I'm here with my guests Dave Inglis and Carson Kolberg, and they're representing Wilfrid Laurier University's Launchpad program. And we were just chatting with Carson about how you started, what was the impetus behind starting Meals in a Jar Inc., and you were really trying to solve a problem that you had, same with your co-founder, Irene. And so I'm just going to turn it over to you, Dave, because you also started your own business venture with the concussion toolbox.
That's right.
And how did that come about? What was sort of the motivation for you to start that?
Sure. So, I mean, the real motivation for me was a personal experience with brain injuries in sport when I was a lot younger. Unfortunately, I had a number of them. And then when I got to university, I started to explore research. And originally during school, when I was studying kinesiology at Laurier, that's kind of what I thought I wanted to do. I wanted to pursue more of an academic route. Had aspirations to go to a chiropractic college. But in going through that and working with Dr. Michael Cinelli at Laurier to study this concussion, specifically how balance was affected by them, started to realize that there was a lot of pain points within the way a lot of the assessments were managed from a therapist perspective, the education in the community. So that's where when I was taking a science entrepreneurship course, actually where I met Steve Farlow, and the whole entire journey began, I started to realize, hey, maybe there's an opportunity to commercialize or turn what I'm working on or working with into a venture. And that's where in my last years of university, I started to realize, hey, maybe this academic route isn't for me. I had aspirations to do an MBA, and this Launchpad program seemed to be a good route to take. But it was just a personal problem that I experienced, and it was through an intimate experience, through research and working with different sport organizations, I started to realize that this education was definitely a big pain point, what I learned to be the biggest pain point later. But I also started mine with building a toolbox or an application that was going to expedite the assessments on the sideline and capture video around it, because we had the assumption that the biggest pain point was the fact that doctors were not on all the sidelines. And so we wanted to replace them with video technology so a parent or a coach could videotape the assessment and then share it with a doctor thereafter. So that's where we really started. But it was interesting because we kind of put the cart before the horse when I started ours, where unfortunately, Susan, we started to build the technology right away. We had this idea. We didn't really get outside of the building right away. At this point in time, the Laurier Launchpad had just started. I was student 01 at that point in time, and there really wasn't that focus on the problem. And so for us, started to build an application, and then later realized that there really wasn't it wasn't a must-have. And so for us, then we really switched over to focusing on the education in the community. And that's where we kind of ended off the business, was right in there. And we ended up merging up with a not-for-profit here in Canada called Sport Legacy Institute Canada, which is a fabulous organization. Whenever you ever hear of a pro athlete donating their brain post-mortem, these are the guys who get it. And they do a lot of that advanced research to try and figure out the long-term consequences of concussions in sport.
So a lot of what you've just said is, you were moving ahead with something, but then you were nimble enough to make some changes when you realized that perhaps you were going down a path that wasn't going to get you exactly where you needed to be.
Absolutely, and you need to be. I mean, unfortunately, it's the survival instinct, right? You realize something's not working, and you gotta jump ship and move on to something else. And whether it's, I think that's, in essence, that's what it is just survival.
Sometimes it's a matter, you can fall so madly in love with your idea, and it's hard to let that go. Mm-hmm. So it's important to be aware of that and be surrounded by people that will be, have those checks and balances in place for you to say, hey, you know what, Dave, all of our research is showing us that we need to go down a different path.
Absolutely, and that's where you have to be able to divorce yourself from any idea, right? You have to be able to emotionally remove yourself from an idea. I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last year or two. I mean, there was challenges, and as I know you've had challenges too with Meal in a Jar, mm-hmm. where at some points you just get really frustrated with yourself, and if you can divorce your passion from the idea and let the market and your mentors and your customers help you shape it, you start to lose less sleep. And you start to build a better product.
Right. Yeah. And it becomes easier along the way, right? You're not fighting with yourself.
That's right. It no longer is it a push uphill. You're letting the momentum or the market pull something out of you, right? Rather than pushing it.
So on that note, Carson, Dave just said you've had some challenges too, and I know this is still fairly new for you. Mm-hmm. What have been some of your experiences? What is something that you've learned in the process of creating Meal in a Jar Inc. that you might have done differently?
When I think of what I do differently, it comes down to I wish I'd kept more journals and taken more pictures along the way. I mean, we're 10 months in, and I'm very fortunate to have a business partner that we have this shared knowledge, and we do have a history of our time together. But just that self-reflection of why did I do that differently today than yesterday, or how have I grown since, or what mistake did I make? And I look at spurts along the way where I had these very deep, intentional reflections, and I look at these long gaps where you're going, what was I thinking in that time? Because there are so many moments where your gut tells you, or the market tells you, or something tells you, hey, you're trying to please too many people, and you've got to change something. You've got to get back to what you're in this for.
Mm-hmm. Part of that, and some of the research that I've been doing lately, is that multitasking cannot be a good thing. We're told particularly that, multitaskers, they get so much accomplished. Well, in many cases, it causes more mistakes, and that there is power in having sort of that, a focus and a granularity, and perhaps saying no to more things.
For sure, you can't be all things to all people, right? I mean, when we created our business, we wanted to create apps for the therapists, the parents, the coaches, and the athletes. When you started yours, I mean, I think you did great because you started with Meal in a Jar. You started with those wholesome lunches and the dinners. But I mean, you could have done the opposite of what I did, and you could have started making your breakfasts and your dinners at the same time, right?
You can go ahead and feel free to make my breakfast and dinners, Carson. That's a problem I need to have solved.
Yeah, we found when we started, we had the large size, the small size, the vegetarian, the gluten-free, the organic. We had all these different things, and we were trying to every recommendation that came along, and there's that point where you go, okay, what are we really good at, and what is it that I'm really good at, and do I know enough to make this thing happen?
And that takes time, right? There's an evolution, and you said the reflective element of it. When you think about that too, what do you wish you could do more of? I know it's still sort of, you're in the shorter run of this, but is there something you'd say, wow, I wish I could do more of this, or I had more time to do this?
When I was, throughout my path towards this company, I'd been a camp leader at Camp Towingo and a student leader in Isaac. And in each of those, I had a chance to really build a team and build an exceptional team and focus a lot on the development of myself as well as the development of others. And I think when you get into this 2-person, 3-person co-founding space of a new business, there's so much operational day-to-day things that need to get done that you don't always focus back and go, okay, who do we need to bring onto the team, or what do we need to grow? And I mean that from a team perspective. And so you sort of think, I wish I had more time to spend with the team, or looking for people who want to get involved, or whether it be student interns or whether it be paid team members. I just wish I had more time to really focus on team building and team activities rather than just getting things done.
I know, and that'll come in time. And when we come back from the break, we're going to hear more from Dave and Carson about their journey. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more on Authentik You. And welcome back to Authentik You. I'm here with Dave Inglis and Carson Kolberg, representing Laurier's Launchpad program. Now, Carson, we were just talking about what you wish you could do more of in your business. And Dave, I was just going to turn things over to you and say, thinking about that, we looked at, the problems that you were trying to solve and how you approached the concussion toolbox. When you look at your life and you look at the journey in the last few years, what is it that you're most proud of?
Oh gosh. I'd probably say the thing I was most proud of is sticking with it. I mean, over this entire journey, it is there's steep learning curves. I'm a big fan of just-in-time education, so a lot of times things kind of fall on your lap right away and you got to get it done. But I would say sticking with it, Susan. I mean, this idea of creating your own authentic path, right? I mean, it's a lot of personal development, and at times, the easier, more efficient path is, in my mind, I've often questioned, why don't I just get a 9-to-5 job? I can hang up the hat at 5 o'clock, I can come home and have the night off, do what I'd like, have 2 weeks vacation a year. And so I would, in short, say sticking with it. That's probably the thing I'm most proud of, and really trying to understand the knowledge behind creating a venture so that it's something that's not just a one-time thing. Right? I think I've identified that I really want to be a serial entrepreneur. I know even my next project won't be my last one. It'll be something I continue to do.
And that you're helping others, find their authentic path and do what they want, and teaching them the value of perseverance, right, and sticking with it.
Absolutely. And so for me to have that, it's a pleasure to be surrounding yourself with logical thinkers who have that synonymous passion for personal development. And if you can educate them, and it's interesting, when my role as an instructor, it's more somebody who's like a mentor and a friend who's just kind of sharing your personal experiences, right? And that's why we have a real peer-to-peer learning in the Launchpad, to do exactly that.
And that helps a lot. So when you think about naysayers, do you find that given the environment that you've got, and Carson, you're already chuckling here, how do you approach that, or is that sort of eliminated given the environment that you created with this entrepreneurial incubator?
There's always going to be naysayers, and I think Carson is a great example of how to tackle those types of people. If anybody ever pushes back on some of Carson's ideas or the assumptions that he has for a new product, Carson never takes it personally, and he never ignores them. He asks them to elaborate and to collect the information behind it. So I think that's a really key important thing for anybody who's looking to do their own venture, is to really be cognizant of the naysayers and try to understand why they're saying it to you. I mean, you are so good for being responsive to feedback. And I think good, bad, or indifferent, you need to collect it all, because at the end of the day, you have to have your own filter on that and then drive your own insights to make your own changes.
And is that an element of curiosity for you, Carson, or what is it that makes you not get defensive or put the walls up when you're faced with, negative influences or naysayers?
I like to understand the choice that people are making. If they're a naysayer, it's because they're choosing to believe something else. And if I can understand what it is that somebody's choosing to believe, or something that somebody's choosing to do, I have a better understanding of where my problem or my solution won't help.
Exactly. It probably helps to solidify your business proposition too, right? Because you're dealing with a response to someone who is putting up giving you some negative feedback that way.
And you mentioned on uncertainty and curiosity. Is you can never be certain. There's always, you can't be, this is the end all be all, this is the solution, and be certain in it. You have to maintain that. The most courageous folks that I've seen in Launchpad and in even the Communitech Hub in the space are those who are uncertain, curious, but also committed. And that seems like a magic solution.
And would you say being comfortable in all those three?
Yeah.
Being comfortable, being uncomfortable,
being
right?
vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And that's important, right? Because you're going to, that curiosity, the uncertainty, you're going to learn, you're going to tease out more ideas. And perhaps then, as we talked about, Dave, is you're not married to an idea. It helps you maybe get unstuck from something and make something even better. So on that note, I'd like to just chat with both of you about the sense of community, whether it's within the nucleus of the Laurier family or our broader community here in Waterloo Region. What role has that played for both of you in terms of building out your businesses, but also the work you're doing within Laurier?
I would say that, as I said, the biggest challenge, something that I'm most proud of, is sticking with it. But that's not something that you just kind of choose to do yourself. I think that community played a huge role in that perseverance element. Because when you're surrounded with like-minded people who are going through the exact same thing, maybe just a few weeks before, when you can share those best practices or sympathize and empathize with what somebody's going through, you start to realize that, hey, maybe I'm not crazy, right? And you keep,
or maybe you are.
Or maybe
but
you
that's
are,
a good thing.
and that is a great thing. So I would say that plays a huge role in it. And when you get knocked off your stool, it's a matter of getting back up and in the ring. And so having a community like that, where that's second nature, is where you want to build your business.
Or maybe there's a hand there to say, Dave, let me help you up.
Absolutely.
It's getting back up again and helping you back up on that stool again. And Carson, what about social media? Has that played a role in terms of community for you?
Yeah, it's where it started. The first jar went on Facebook, and the first customer said, "Hey, can I get one of these?" That was the beginning of the story.
Was it your hairstylist?
Amongst the five of the first. But I remember Facebook is where we can put out our story to the world and put out things that, pictures and videos and ideas and have confirmation. There's no dislike button, but you certainly get a lot of feedback through that. And I find Twitter, this community, especially the Waterloo region, you get so much feedback through Twitter, you get so much connection. It's like having a personal conversation, even though it's broadcast. I feel it's different than Facebook in that sense. But the more time I spend on it, the more I see how interconnected this web is.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So just before we close off, I'd love to get your perspective. If there's anything that you'd like to share, both of you, for our viewers, what advice might you have about your journey, or for them who might be considering starting up their own business venture?
Yeah. There's times I've felt that I've been totally flipped out of the boat, and you're just in the water and the waves trying to figure out which way is up. And I find it's in those points where you can just look back to where you've come from and say, what is it that I really excelled at? What organization, what alumni group do I belong to? Where are my roots? And I think that's where you can start to reconnect and say, this is where I've come from. And then you start to look forward as, here's where I want to go. And you find the way up from there.
That's excellent. Thank you. How about you, Dave?
I would say, you're not going to know what to do. A few people have said this, saying you're going to jump off a cliff with no parachute and you're going to build on the way down. And you won't know what to do. And that's okay. Ask for help. That's the thing I could really say, is ask for help. Also give. I'm a huge fan of the idea, and Gary Vanderbeck, who writes a great book called Jab, 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 Hook, I believe it is. And it's give, 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 take is the idea. And even when you're going through this whole entire process of creating something, don't lose sight of how important it is to give to others. Because then I think you start to create a really dynamic network where when you need a hand, people are lining up to give you help, right? And so I think that's really, really important. And so just really trying to focus on that amongst all the other things you're doing in parallel is really important.
Thank you very much. Those are both great tips, and I'm sure the viewers will really appreciate them. And I'm so delighted that you were able to join me here in Authentik You.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today in Authentik You. There's so many things that you could have been doing in the last 30 minutes, and I'm delighted that you chose to spend it with us. And if you'd like more information about our guests or about Authentik You, please connect with us at AuthentikYou.com and be social with us on Facebook or on Twitter at Authentik You, and that's Authentic with a K. Special thanks for set design by David Boyes, hair by Scott Keller of So Chic, and makeup by Jen Havenga of Distinct Boutique, and also to Bev Dunnington, who made this fabulous neck candy that I'm wearing today. And finally, thanks to my fabulous crew here at Rogers TV. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's always a good day to be your authentic self.